What's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we're going to be looking at the XRP price chart, coming off of an insane meteoric rise of nearly 100% last week, after the summary judgment was released in the SEC versus Ripple lawsuit case stating that XRP as a digital token is not in and of itself a contract, transaction, or scheme that embodies the Howey requirements of an investment contract. As Brad Garlinghouse stated, this is the most important part of the ruling, and this is now a matter of law that is not up for trial. And that XRP in itself is not an investment contract and not a security. After XRP's large rise that happened last week, price has since been stalled out. This is something we definitely expected over here on the channel. The last two videos I've put out on XRP last week on the day of the ruling and the day after, that if we were to behave similarly to the past, we would see the price stall out for a little while. The good news is price has not acted any differently than it has previously. It's still acted right in line. But the question is, are we preparing for another bigger leg up? So we'll zoom out a little bit. We'll talk about how we got to where we're at right now. Then we'll look to see if we're exhibiting similar behaviors of what does happen before another rise upwards. And we'll also look at any potential differences that are happening right now. Otherwise, there's a ton of excitement out there in the XRP community. There's a lot of attention being drawn to this asset. It is now the only one with non-security status designated to it in the court of law. And with that comes a lot of excitement. So are we on the verge of something much bigger happening in here? Let's take a closer look. On this YouTube channel, we've spent a lot of time focusing on the XRP price chart, and in particular, the accumulation range that we've been in here, how this has been Wyckoff accumulation. We've spent a lot of time covering this and showing the different accumulation schematics. That we have two different versions. We have one that has a spring phase, which we've seen many places throughout the market, and we have one that has last point of support, which we can see much closer here, in which a spring comes down to the bottom side of the trading range and usually can be very aggressive, whereas last point of support can be more of a drawn out, boring accumulation final ending before finally going. As we discussed about in the last 2 weeks, it seemed more likely that we were forming a last point of support, considering we had already seen the spring phase throughout the rest of the market. We actually even talked about it on Tuesday, 2 days before the lawsuit summary judgment was ruled, that the ultimate bull run setup was now, how the market had already exhibited that we had completed phase C, and we're now waiting for phase D and E to emerge. And that a lot of people were probably missing it, because while we saw a last point of support, many of us were looking for a spring phase to show up, as we saw back in 2017, at least here on the XRP price chart. We had already seen the spring emerge throughout the rest of the market. It's just that in phase C, we have two different styles that we can do. And then we came to the conclusion it must be that we've had last point of support here for XRP. Now, why would these two things matter in general at all? Well, because if we're about to try to say, hey, this thing could go on and do something like this, then we probably need to find a lot of similarities to what has been happening currently right now for the last 2.5 years compared to that 2.5 year period. And if we're hoping that we're somewhere right here for XRP currently, we would want to see a lot of similarities still emerging in here, right? Otherwise, it's pointless to even present this unless if there's like a good reason to do it. No doubt throughout the last 5 years, we've looked at this and everybody's been patiently waiting for some big move like that to come up in here. And it just has never appeared, right? So we have to look for conditions to be similar to that to even think, hey, we could do something like this, right? And so we'll shift that out of the way for just a second, just to talk about this range really fast, is that we can clearly see during this whole time period, this has been a bubble, a crash, a retrace, and a reaccumulation. Back in 2013 through 2017, it was a bubble, a crash, a retrace, and a reaccumulation. What has been so intriguing about 2013 through 2017 is that the initial crash from the peak to the bottom was a little bit over 95%, and then the crash from the retrace was about 85%. So we had 95%, then 85%. And then when we look at 2018 through 2023, we had 96%, and again, 85%. So 96% for the crash, 85% for the reaccumulation, 95% for the crash, 85% for the reaccumulation. Incredibly similar percentages for both of them, and structurally looking very similar. And what we noticed during the reaccumulation phase is the price behavior that was exhibited in there has been very similar to price behavior being exhibited in here. And that this lasted 826 days before the breakout happened. And here we are in 2023, that this took 820 days to then break out. So we're talking 820 days versus 826 days, both completing Wyckoff accumulations. And now the big question is, are we at the first pause here before things get shooting really high? So what we should likely do is zoom in on that price behavior in both circumstances. So what we see back here in 2017 is that price really came back down to sort of back test the breakout of the range. We spent a similar amount of time in this range. This is over a year, just as we have in 2022 and 2023. And then when we have the initial breakout, the sign of strength emerging, we do go back to back test the top of this range to then eventually shoot up higher. We can see that by putting that right here. But that if XRP were to do something like that, it would still have lower to go. That area really resides between like 54 cents and 58 cents in order to go back and hit the top of that range. But what we could see obviously as well is that price obviously went significantly higher than it did in here, right? If you were to go like this, right? Well, technically speaking, we've kind of already gone that same depth of what that little fall was in there. However, it did have the appearances of being a backtest of the top of the broken range in this circumstance. So with price behavior currently at this moment, that's slightly different. Price behavior is acting the same. And really from the breakout spot, it's about the same percentage, right? If you just kind of look at where this took off from right here to getting to this height, they're about the same. But the difference is that we started from a lower place down here, and then we also back tested on top of the support, which was the previous resistance. Currently, right now, we're just sitting much further away from that. So the percentages happening in here are obviously very similar, but the issue that we see that is different is that this has the appearances of a backtest on top, and we don't have that here yet on XRP. But one thing we can do is we can zoom in on this on a smaller time frame and see if the price is acting just as it did in here. Even though we haven't pulled back as far, are we still acting similar to in here? Let's go ahead and zoom in on both of these. And what we actually see is that price is still behaving the same as it was back in 2017. That by the time we were this far into it, really just a day in, we had essentially reached our bottom already, which we could see here and here. Then price sort of meandered in here, meandering in here, and then it just went into accumulation again to then shoot out. If that's the case here, then it would mean we don't really go below the current lows that we've already put in. We've mentioned that it's moved at a very similar time perspective as it did back in 2017, whereas it took 820 days here in 2021 to 2023. It took 826 days in 2015 to 2017. By the time we were this far in, we were about 3 days and 16 hours sitting right here. Right now, where we sit, we're about 3 days and 20 hours, right? Move back one more to when this little red candle showed up. Move back one more to where that red candle showed up, 316, 312, right? We're right in that same ballpark of time with how we're moving currently right now. So what we see happening in the price of XRP at this exact moment is we are still exhibiting the same price behavior as we did during the breakout of 2017. I would say the only issue is 2017 really was near that previous resistance level as a support, whereas in 2023, we're not there. So the question will be, which one overrides? Is the thing so bullish, so ridiculous, the buyers are going absolutely nuts behind the scenes, that pulling down to this price level at this time, at this exact moment, is going to be too difficult to do? Because if we were going to continue moving at a similar time, we should have expected probably that this would have gotten us down there, or at least right here. Instead, yesterday morning, we took a little break to the upside. Now we're just starting to accumulate again. I even thought that we were going to get it over the weekend, that we would get the dip, which I had posted on Twitter. Do you spot what this is? Everybody screaming, just tell me, BCB. Don't make me look at the chart. So then I gave the count. Looked like a crashing structure to me. But instead, price popped out. But we did end up getting that seventh wave there on things like stellar lumens. And even this morning, we're now getting it for things like Ethereum going on to take out that low as we were looking for. But XRP in itself just holding up much stronger. And so that's kind of the challenges that we have currently right here. Price behavior is still exhibiting 2017. It really just puts you in here right now. The question is, will we backtest a support level, or is this thing rampaging so hard that that area is just gone? All my logic of doing technical analysis and studying charts tells me don't let my guard down about that, because when you break from a range like this, you are typically going to come back and backtest that range. But I'm also not blind to the fact that this thing is still holding up strong. And just percentage wise of, what it did pull back down in here, we've already gone similar percentages as well. So what I would say is that price is still acting like 2017's breakout happening in here. If we shift these up a little bit just to see the size of this range as it happened in here, you could see the size of that range is very similar. The difference just is the location of where they occurred at, in that we took place on top of the support of the previous resistance, whereas right now we've just got a nice little gap sitting here between us and between that breakout level right now. So is it acting like 2017 right here? Yes and no. Yes, price behavior is identical. The difference is the location at which it's occurring from. We're doing it a little bit higher. So normally we're not spending so much time focusing on super short-term price action. We're really focused on the bigger picture. But considering where we're at, which is why I started with talking about the bigger picture, and then we kind of zoom into the smaller time frame to say where we are within the bigger picture, if it's true, puts us in a moment like this right in here. And so now it's a big watch really closely to see what happens in here. I personally don't really like doing short-term technical analysis coverage on the channel, because if I give my opinions on this, what could you have happen? You could have a news event come in that would cause some liquidation event to occur to either sides, right? Catalysts can cause short-term changes in regards to liquidations. Typically, they're not going to impact the major trend. It's usually going to happen within trend, where it was already going to end up going. But in short-term price action like this, where we're looking at the 4-hour candles, we're looking at 1-hour candles, some big news happens, you could have something big happen in either direction on the short-term stuff. So that's why I'm not a huge fan of covering it on the channel and focus mostly on the bigger time frame. But to understand why we're looking at short-term today, it's because what we did is we started by looking at the bigger stuff. We looked at this 820-day range that we've been in, and the phase at which we would be in would be a phase like this. And this phase in 2017 only lasted 1 week. And so right now we're kind of working on our 4th day, and we're trying to figure out, are we going to continue acting like that? If so, here's what those things did back then. And in that circumstance, really sort of holding that 68, 69 cent price level is what we did do in that accumulation before it shifted up one more price level. But to also keep in mind, it still stayed here for the remainder of the week. It was the end of the week before things really got moving. So I don't see any reason currently to think otherwise outside of the concerns of the top of the range here. The breakout range hasn't been back tested, uncertain if it needs to right now, as price is still acting really just like it did back then. So we'll check in on it every day this week for sure. I would say the most challenging part in times like this, when price moves up that fast, is what the emotions of the market. You have an insane amount of excitement that happens, and then an insane amount of toxicity that'll flip back and forth, and worry and concern, and then excitement, and then worry, and then concern. Just throughout the weekend, I had people saying, just make a video. You need to make a video. What's going on with price? Why is it falling? And so what you have when you have these big price swings that happen, when volatility gets introduced into the market and you see a 100% price rise in one day, totally normal to see negative 25% the next day. But most people aren't accustomed to that. They think, oh, if I buy a big green candle after it goes up, that means it's going to keep going up. It's going to be volatile. It's going to be a rocky road. Hopefully we are in the big fat breakout. But even after talking about it all last week, being like, if we go into this, this lasts just, it lasts a little while, and 5-7 days, and just 3 days into it, you have people really freaking out already. So it's going to be an emotional ride for a lot of people. It's going to be very, very difficult for a lot of people in this, especially the people who have FOMO bought. but this is the most volatile market in the world. I think the fortunate thing that we do see is just how it's reacting. And people often make the misconception to say, hey, I'm predicting this. This isn't a prediction video, right? What this is showing you is exactly how price is behaving. I'm trying to show you the similarities. I'm trying to show you the differences. I'm showing you the things that have happened in the past versus what is happening currently right now. I can show you the underlying indicators to show you the strength that is emerging in here. I can show you the flips that are happening in here on large time frames, like the monthly time frame. But these aren't predictions. This is just what is actually happening right now and how things have played out when it's done something like this before. It's up to you to decide if this is stupid or if there's a valid argument to it. But I would have to say, with how we're acting currently, there still is nothing really different about the price action that's happening in regards to the correction we're seeing now, the amount of time it's taken, and even the little waves that are happening in it up until this point. That's still, it's acting just like, whoop, off and away it goes. But I have to point out that one part. It happened at a different location. It happened lower, and it happened on top of a broken resistance turned into a support. So that's the complication of the current times, but current price behavior looking awfully familiar still. But if we do go along with this, and it just keeps doing the same thing and moving at the same pace and the same price levels, well, then July still looks to be an exciting month ahead. So, all right, guys, we'll go ahead and start wrapping this thing up. The thing that I'll be paying attention to out there is to see if we just kind of start flatlining and if volatility kind of dries up there for a second at about 68, 69, 70 cents, as long as we're still holding that level and volatility just really kind of slows down, that would still be very similar to what happens in accumulation to start shifting up again. So hopefully tomorrow we come on and that's the same thing that we've got going on. Otherwise, I'm trying to contain my excitement because if we are in this phase, I think we could all see what would happen next. That's quite exciting. But at the same time, you know, as me on this channel, I'm always trying to contain those emotions to keep myself in check and just remain level-headed so that I'm not blindsided by things and not thinking from an emotional state, but using logic. So, all right, we'll check in on that one tomorrow. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. If you're looking for something to do, you can check out my website over here, which is bcbacker.com. This is a brand new course that I put together, deep diving into the cryptocurrency market, into technical patterns, ranges, the Wyckoff method with Wyckoff accumulation and distribution, Elliott wave theory, a highly requested topic to cover, the historical behavior of the cryptocurrency market with previous Bitcoin bull runs, altcoin seasons, lessons learned, dominance, and the halving and the stock market, along with additional things that I've learned from market experience, such as research, percentages, tokenomics, crowd behavior, meme coins, and of course, managing emotions. It all comes with downloadable PDFs and links to additional resources so you can further your education if you desire. You can check that out over here on bcbacker.com. There's also a link in the description of this video. Otherwise, I'll check in with you guys later. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.